Good day, dear students. Welcome to our program, Counseling and Learner Support 2 for B.Ed Honours, as well as the fourth year in Bachelor of Education in Senior Primary. This is examination contact session for 2018, and my name is Aina Simpson. My contact number is 081 2457 456, and my email address is as follows in small letters: ainasimpson@gmail.com. Welcome to Counseling and Learner Support subject content. I am your tutor and your tutor marker, responsible to mark your assignments for this subject. I wish you all to be hardworking, dedicated, and self-driven students in this course, meaning that I urge you all to take up your study serious, as you are the owner who need to manage it. This presentation will take you through the subject content as well as how to approach questions in terms of examination. There is not a specific examination contact-based for a specific exam, but this is going to cater for all three examinations: May, June examination, August examination, as well as November examination. They are all catered in this presentation. Our modules' aims are to sensitize the teacher trainees to the psychological needs of learners. That is why we need this module, and to develop their guidance and counseling know and how as the skills, and also to look at counseling theories, explain how features of modern life influence psychological well-being, and also the implementation of approaches in individual and group counseling. How do we go about counseling an individual or a group? The core functions of the counseling process. What is the main idea, or what is the main function of the counseling process, and their relevant implementation skills and techniques. It also looked at the principles and levels of crisis intervention, as well as the counseling interventions for underachievers and for social issues. We also look at the features of career counseling and the upper primary and secondary learner support. Those are the aims of our module. In short, it is a summing up of different units we have in our module. How is the module being assessed? The assessment policy is a final pass mark of 50% is required, of which is calculated by 60 of the examination mark and 40% of the semester, which is a continuous assessment, or as we call it, an assignment mark. So in the assignment, you are expected to score at least minimum 40 and up. So and in examination, you are required to score 60% and up. So our papers, being it assignment or being it an examination, it is set out of 120. A sub-minimum of 50% must be attained in examination. So meaning that once you have your 40%, and then you also get your minimum 60% from examination, these are added together, which gives us 100, and then divided by 2, then we get the sub-minimum 50%. Then of course you pass your subject. Examination format is 2 hours 30 minutes, and as I said earlier that our total marks are 120. And then we have open-ended questions that examines your understanding and application of knowledge, skills, as well as ideas. Our questions are not only close-ended questions, they also give room for you to explain and apply your knowledge as skills as well as ideas of what you know about your subject content. And answer on the examination script. Of course, you will be given the examination script booklets where to answer, to write your answers. And then we have each unit has what we call exit learning outcomes. So exit learning outcomes basically is the main point of what is it that it's expected of you to know in a specific unit. So each unit gives us these points so that at the end of the unit, this is what you are expected to know before you move on to the next unit. So exit learning outcomes of Unit 1, it reads, evaluate counseling theories. We are looking at evaluate macro counseling perspectives or theories, which are the feminism, the Marxism theory, and the systems theory. We have quite a number of them, but for now we are only looking at the 3. Explain the characteristics of psychopathology in African culture. We are looking at what are the characteristics of African culture regarding counseling. How do we marry the two? Describe the signs and symptoms of pathology to look out for when assessing the mental state of a person in order to refer such learner. There are some signs and some symptoms that one need to look at before you decide that a particular learner or client is in need of counseling. So the learner needs to first show some signs as well as symptoms. Let us look at what the unit has for us. Theories and tools in psychology. Behavior approach. Human behavior is learned. That is one of the approaches or one of the theories that we have or we are going to learn about. Human behavior is learned, thus all behavior can be unlearned and new behaviors learned in its place. It is also concerned primarily with the observable and measurable aspects of human behavior. Therefore, unacceptable behavior can be unlearned. It is a continuous process. So when we are talking of behavior approach, we are looking at the human behavior which a person has to learn and also to unlearn. And in the process, such behavior can be rewarded, or one can be punished for not doing it right or for doing something wrong. Then we look at feminism. It marks the influence on the female experience, including interpersonal association, family structure, and other collective values. We are looking at how do you interact with other people, and in the family structure, who are the people in that specific family, and what are the values they have as a group or as a family, and what is it that they do together. And then we have the Marxism theory. This theory offers 2 sets of ideas: a description of how society operates and how history has unfolded, and also explain the nature of capitalism. Now, when we look at the two, how society operates, it's very important that we should know how people operate in around us, or the people who are surrounding us. We need to understand what is their history, where have they started, where do they come from, and where are they going, and what is it that they are doing. The systems theory. A system is a network of interrelated relationships. A system is thus a functional whole consisting of components or subsystems when the organization of the components as a whole change the characteristics of the individual components. We are looking at the interrelated relations. So this is a network where each part in the system need each other. You cannot operate on your own. So you can operate because you need another person, as well as another person is also in need of you. And then we are looking at the science of pathology that may assist the counselor when assessing the client, and also in making an informed referral to other professionals. Explain the characteristics of psychopathology in Africa. When we look at science of pathology, for you as a professional, you need to identify the signs, and then after you have identified these signs, it will help you to make an informed decision that a particular learner or client is in need of referral to further professionals. We are looking at it being a counselor in a certain area, or this learner, the client could be sent to a hospital or so. We cannot just decide that this particular client need to go without us seeing or identifying the signs of pathology or symptoms of what the client has presented to us. General characteristics, validity features, and limitations of theories, they are also part of it. We are not saying the theory has it all. There are also some limitations as to, in some areas we are unable to make use of it. And biopsychosocial theory, which perceives people as holistic being. Science of pathology that may assist the counselor when assessing the client, and also in making an informed referral to other professionals. So that is the same as what we said in the science of pathology, so as the symptoms of pathology, in order for you to get a clear picture of whether the particular client need to be referred to for further professional assistance or not. And then we are looking at exit learning outcomes of Unit 2. Explain how features of modern life influence psychological well-being. Bronfenbrenner. We are looking at this psychologist who came up with a system which works in our society where we find ourselves. We are looking at macro, meso, micro. So there are 5 levels then, where we start with the micro, which is talking about the individual. This is now the learner and the people around him, the immediate family members. And then we also have the meso, which is the next level, after we have seen that they are very close to people next to this child. Who are the next people again after that? And then we move on to macro. So in total there are 5. So we are going to hear more about that. And then explain the aims of primary intervention, secondary intervention, and tertiary intervention. So intervention is like you are trying to find a breakthrough from what the person already know. And then we start with primary, secondary, and tertiary intervention. Unit 2, features of modern life and how they influence psychological well-being. Ecological system model has been developed by Urie Bronfenbrenner. Divided the environment in 5 different levels, as I said earlier, and then the microsystem. This is a child with the immediate surrounding, for example, parents, siblings, extended families. And then the meso affect the child directly, because it contains the relationship between the microsystem. So you have the child, and the next step, once the child step out of his circle levels of which is micro, the next level that the child is moving into, that is now the meso, where the relationship still has to come. Exosystem, an environment in which an individual is not involved. Why is an individual not involved? So this is basically an experience, for example, the workplace of your parents. You are not directly involved because you are not working there. It's only your parents who are working there. But how do you get to be involved in? You could be involved in, for example, if your parents face a retrenchment or anything that has to do when your life is going to be harmed or your life has to be at risk, then that is the only time you are involved, but you are not directly involved. Although at the end of the day, you will become part of those who are involved. Macro, customs and cultural environment in which the child resides. This also has to do with the customs and culture, the environment in which the child lives. So we are living in a multinational cultural environment, but still this has to do with what a child needs to know. What are their customs? What are their traditions before we move on to multicultural environment? There is what we call these customs, which a child needs to know that I belong to this and this is what we do. So each culture has its own way of doing things. The chronosystem is made up of the environmental events and transitions that occur throughout a child's life, including socio-historical events, things in the environment, or policies. When we are looking at the chronosystem system, this is the events which are in our environment. When we are looking at the policies, we have them in the environment, but at the end of the day, we are also making use of these policies, even if we are not directly involved, but somehow we are using it or we are involved, because we also need to work according to that. Then we have the aims of primary, secondary, and tertiary intervention. We are looking at the importance of this level for referral that are informed you when to provide assistance to your learners and their parents. When we are looking at intervention, how best can you come in to assist? This can be done in 3 different groups or different ways, where we have primary, secondary, and tertiary intervention. It is important that we know this so that it also assists us to know what we need to know before we move on to the last resort of trying to assist one another. Primary intervention refers to specifically to obtaining help in a person's immediate vicinity. Remember, when we talked about the Bronfenbrenner system, we started with the micro system, which is the child in the center, and then this child has immediate family members. So as after the immediate family members, there are also other informed places like schools, churches, and so on. And then we look at secondary intervention. Micro might offer inpatient and outpatient care. When we talk of secondary intervention, this can be inpatient or outpatient. We are not really saying these are the only patient who could be there. It could be a person just walk in, get assistance, and go back home. And then we also have the ones who go in and they require few days before they are released to go home. They might decide that it is necessary to transfer where there is highly specialized care given. And then we are looking at tertiary intervention. They provide specialized care at tertiary institutions like cardiologists and any other places where you go and you are treated, because these people, they are specialized in that area. Demonstrate the merit of primary, secondary, and tertiary intervention in problems facing children under your care. How best would you demonstrate the merit, whether these children are taken care of and whether they are not, and what intervention can be done from the primary, secondary, so as to tertiary level. Then we look at Unit 3, which is learning exit learning outcomes for Unit 3. It's to evaluate the implementation of approaches in individual and group counseling. Different practitioners in the field of psychology, clinical and counseling, education, industrial, and registered counselor. Evaluate features or characteristics and phases of psychoanalytic approach, counseling techniques of the psychodynamic strategy. Evaluate characteristics or features and various approaches in group counseling in schools. Now we are looking at different practitioners in the field of psychology. Who are these? We have the clinical and counseling, we have educational counselor, there are industrial counselor, so as the registered counselors. So when we talk of these three different people or more than that, clinical and and counseling, this we find them in a hospital. And then we have the educational one, which also based, it assists the learners, but it's based in schools or in educational ministries. And then we have industrial, which we find in companies. And then we have the registered counselors, who are also part of the different practitioners. Features and phases of the psychoanalytic approach. Counseling techniques and psychodynamic strategies. We are looking at what are the phases of counseling approach. When you do counseling, what do you do? Where do you start? What are the, how do you put ideas together? And how do you relate the whole problem that you could be informed by a learner, how do you make it possible that this learner will open up to you? Features of group counseling and the various approaches which could be used. We can also look at the characteristics of group counseling, as we had earlier, that you cannot only counsel one person, you can also do it in a group. So, but then there are ways of doing it. So as the characteristics, what do we look at? And features and various approaches in individual counseling in schools. So what we look at basically here, it's about how to counsel an individual so as how to counsel a group. Then we have exit learning outcomes, which is unit 4. Discuss core functions of the counseling process. Describe the 3 core functions of the counseling process, which are relationship building, assessing the problem, and addressing the problem. Explain the aims and kinds of problems that counseling strategies addresses. Discuss counseling techniques that can be used as strategies. Looking at the core function of the counseling process and their relevant implementing skills or techniques. We have 2 theorists, Culley and Bond, used the interactive skills model in counseling on how to guide learners through 3 stages. The 3 core functions of the counseling process. What are these main functions? We look at the relationship building, we look at assessing the problem, as well as addressing the problem. For any other person to get in contact with someone in order to counsel or in order to render your assistance by counseling this client, you first need to have a relationship with that person. You have to build a relationship with the person, and you also need to understand what is the problem so as to assess the problem. And then after building the relationship, you assess the problem, and then once you assess and you are satisfied, then you look at how best can you assist in order for the client to solve his problem. Not for you to give the answers, but to make it possible for this person to find a way how best he or she could address the problem. Then we define culture from a counseling perspective and propose how culture could be accommodated in counseling. Even if we are talking of modern and cultural areas, we also need to incorporate culture into counseling. How do we do that? And what can be done in order to accommodate counseling from cultural point of view? I do believe that we all came from different cultures, but then we cannot look at counseling in isolation and think that it is just modern. There are also areas that we need to look or we need to borrow from our culture in order to counsel. Of course, you must have heard elderly people in your community talking of what they used to do before they get to know that there are such people called counselors and so on. Problems have been there, people have been assisted, but which ways have they been using? And then we move on to exit learning outcomes of Unit 5. Discuss principles and levels of crisis intervention. Describe the meaning of crisis. Describe the positive systems of people experiencing a crisis. Explain 4 categories of types of crisis. Discuss the principles underlying crisis intervention, and then discuss some ethical guidelines for counselors. Now we are looking at what we just talked about now, this could be the possible questions from each of the activity of each of the units, or what you are expected to know by the end of the unit. But this is what the unit itself has to say. We need to understand what is the meaning of crisis, and then we also need to look at symptoms experienced during crisis. For you to tell that somebody is going through a certain crisis, what have you noticed? What did you look at during that time? And then we have stages of crisis. We also have categories, 4 categories of types of crisis, ethical principles in counseling. So you get to explain what crisis is, and then we look at the symptoms during that time and different stages, and then we look at ethical principles. What is it that one needs to do and one should not do? Principles underlying crisis intervention, level of crisis intervention. And then Unit 6, exit learning outcomes. By the end of this unit, you should be able to understand what or how to analyze the counseling intervention for underachievers and the social issues. We are looking at discussion of the factors commonly related to underachievement. When we talk of underachievement, what exactly comes into our mind? This person looked at is able to, but then for some reason the person is not able to do the work, the person is not able to do the studies. So now, what is it that we need to look at? There are some factors that we need to look at in order to see that this person is now in a group of the underachiever. Analyze the counseling interventions for underachievers in different phases of school. We have different phases of school. We have the primary and the secondary, and then we have different social issues. This we need to look at by trying to understand the factors first, and also to analyze the counseling intervention for underachievers in different phases of school. So the phases of school, as I said earlier, are primary and secondary, with its different, or with their different social issues. Then we look at this counseling intervention for underachievers social issues. This is now a unit itself. In there we need to understand what is meant by underachievement and what are the different types of underachievers, the general characteristics of people who are underachievers. What do we look at in order to say this is an underachiever learner or this is not? Factors that commonly influence underachievers. For any other person to become underachiever, there should be factors which contributed to the situation to be the way we see it. Counseling interventions for junior and secondary underachievers. We are looking at junior and secondary underachievers. What are the interventions? What can be done? How can they be assisted in order for them to come out of the hole that they must have fallen in? Interventions for rape victims, teenager pregnancy, possible suicide cases, alcohol and drug abuse, cosmetics violences, and HIV and AIDS. There are also some ways of intervening, some ways of rendering assistance to rape victims, to those who fall pregnant at a very early age, and also those who have possible ideas of committing suicide because of this and that, and then other group of those who are using drugs, domestic violence. Some people are being abused, but then they are afraid of saying this. Then we have exit learning outcomes of Unit 7. Discuss features of career counseling. Explain the changing world of work. When we are looking at this, we have work and we have the time, which is the change. What is it that we need to understand there? Explain the employability skills and values that most jobs require. Discuss important meanings of work. When we are looking at careers, we are looking at different occupations, and now we are looking at the time that the world has changed. With the changing of the world, we are looking at what are the skills that one needs to have in order to get what job. And then we are looking at what does the work we do has a meaning, and if it has a meaning, what is it that I can do in order to add value to the work I am doing. Changing world of work. We are looking at the world has moved and we are now in a small village where everyone can be reached, especially through technology. And then we are looking at the most employability skills and values that are required in jobs. You cannot just tell yourself you want to become a chartered accountant if you haven't studied accounting and you haven't known this subject background. The importance of meaning of work, social, economic, political, ethical, and morals. So for any other person to add value to the work you do, you should be able to understand what social means when it comes to world of work. What does economics mean when it comes to the world of work, political, ethical, so as moral. That should be very, very important that we understand that. This is why we find that some people will get into the job and they don't last because they are not that material. Then we have two key messages on the importance of school to learners under your care. So what is it that you need to inform your learners when it comes to the importance of school? They need to understand why is it important for them to remain in school. Features of entrepreneurship education. What are the characteristics of entrepreneurship in education? We need to understand what is entrepreneurship, which is related to business, and we need to understand why is it important that learners understand that. Remember, it's all about career counseling. They need to understand what is it's important for them to be in school, so as to before they get to the world of work. Exit learning outcomes of Unit 8. Analyze features of upper primary and secondary learner support. We are looking at questions like examine common possible barriers that has effect to learning and how to address them. We are looking at analyze the backlogs of the environmentally deprived child and outline ways how teachers could address these backlogs. Clarify how to advise teachers in which manner they could support children's learning at home. Appraise the characteristics or the features of democratic classroom discipline that would support learning rather than punishing learners. So let us see what our unit has to say. Features of senior primary and secondary learner support. Now we are looking at the quality teaching is based upon understanding of the learning process. The features of learning process, how and when it could be applied. So for learning process, we need to look at in which environment this child finds himself. Is the environment conducive for learning or not? Common possible barriers that has effect to learning and how to address them. There are quite a number of factors that commonly affect the learning, and how can they be addressed. It could be the environment itself, the society, people around, the learning materials itself. It could be the system, all those, and how best can we address that. Features of emotional support by the teacher. As a teacher, you should be able to support learners who are going through emotional issues. That could be not at the level with other learners, or they could have lost a close family member, or they live in an environment which is not conducive, and all that. It could make them to be emotional, and also the ones that are affected by the disease, including poverty too. Then we are looking at the features of cognitive academic support for learners. How best can you support a learner in his or her academic? Feedback to learners about their learning. It's very important that whenever you give a lesson, and the lesson has to be assessed, with the assessment could be any form of assessment. It can be a test, it can be a quiz, it can be an examination, it can be an assignment. You are required to give feedback, because learners need to understand where they have gone wrong and how best can they change wherever they need to improve. And then we have the backlogs of the environment. What is that is pulling our learners back in our environment? We look at it and we need to find the ways how best this can be supported or addressed. Clarify how to advise parents in which manner they could support children's learning at home. We have three people here. We have the learner, the teacher, and the parents. So as a teacher, you need to find ways how best can you advise parents and support them in order to assist these children learning at home when they are at home, because there is a time that they are at home with their parents and they still need to be assisted. So as a teacher, you need to come in and assist in that regard. Features and advantages of problem-based learning. Convincing learners about the importance of schooling. We mentioned it earlier that there is need for children to know why are they in school. That was in Unit 7. And now we are looking at the advantages of problem-based learning. So these learners, they need to understand how best can they address problems that they might be facing. Who do they go to, and how to approach the next person who could be of their assistance. And features of democratic classroom discipline that would support learning rather than punishing learners. First of all, you need to understand the difference between democratic classroom as also autocratic classroom, where the punishing comes in. Because with the democratic classroom, the learners are more disciplined, I should put it that way, because they are free to air their views, and in autocratic classroom, where learners in most cases they are being punished because it's only one person who has authority to say, and then that is it. Should they go against that, then already they are punished. Inductive or indirect teaching, learning, and homework. How do you assist the learners when they have to work on their homeworks and the inductive of the work that they have to do? So we need to inform them or to find a way how best can we assist learners in indirect teaching learning, so they can be taking up their learning in a different style, which is not the one they are used to, because learning does not only take place in the classroom, but it can take place anywhere. That was what we have in our module. Basically, this is only the summary points of what each unit has and what we need to prepare. But remember, it is not for a specific examination. It is for the 3 examinations we are expected to write in this year 2018. You are free to contact me should you experience any problems with your studies, and you may call me on Mondays to Thursdays at the time given, which is 2:30 to 8 o'clock in the evening, and Saturday the time it's 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the evening. And please, I urge you, you first have to read your resources, understand them, and have valid questions, not to say what is the question to this and what is the answer to the answer to this question, as most of the students come up with such questions. And good luck with your studies.